Okay, folks, for those of you just signing on, you are in the right place. This is the briefing hour. So if you could just sit tight, we'll be opening this up in a minute. Hello and welcome to Briefing Hours for Sales Leaders. We promise to be brief, bright, and bring it all to you in 19 minutes or less. This is Will Brooks, COO of the Brooks Group, and I'm excited to be joined today by Lisa Rose, Regional Vice President of Sales. Lisa has a passion for collaborating with sales leaders to develop an effective, motivational sales culture inside of their organization.
Hey, Will. Glad to be here today.
So today we're going to be discussing how to help salespeople prioritize their accounts to be sure they're spending their time where it matters the most.
That's right, Will. Salespeople are always busy, but as sales leaders, we have to ask, are they spending their time on high-gain activities with the right accounts?
You got that right. So let's just jump right into it.
Sure.
So I think the right place to start here is to ask ourselves, why prioritize accounts? And, we came across some really, I think, insightful and eye-opening research here. So companies whose account prioritization exceeds expectations have 11% higher win rates than companies whose account prioritization needs improvement. Lisa, you want to talk to us a little bit about your take on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you read a fact like this, you think there's a temptation to think it's only big companies. But really what we've found in our experience over 40 years is often the little companies see even bigger gains. So for instance, I have a building supply company that went through a process of prioritizing. And what they found was a drastic increase in business when they really focused on the right activities with the right companies. So it doesn't have to be a big company to see this kind of change.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oftentimes inside of those small organizations, they're just, out there busy trying to get what they can. So to add some level of planfulness to this, good returns,
Right.
good returns.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's take a look at the next one here. 45% of sales reps report needing help figuring out which accounts to prioritize. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you'll probably laugh at this, Will, knowing me, but certain behavioral styles, our temptation may be just to go, go, go. Activity will turn into success, and that's not always the case. So, instead of just being busy, spending the time on the right thing really pays off better, right?
Yeah. I know some reps here, Lisa,
Yes.
who may prefer to avoid the plan.
Guilty.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, so another element we looked at was, 48% of salespeople never follow up with a prospect. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and stop. 12% of salespeople only make 3 contacts and stop. And only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts. And yet, 80% of sales are made on the 5th and 12th contact. And I got to say, Will, you told me this about a year ago, and I thought, yeah. I had to become a believer in this. But I know within our own company, adding somebody who's making appointments and following up consistently really has paid off. And it's not just, again, it's not just little companies that don't follow up. Some of the bigger opportunities are the ones that take more time contact to reach them.
Yeah, and if you're a company out there that relies heavily on inbound leads to drive your business, it can get frustrating. Somebody comes to your website, they request information, your reps follow up 2, maybe 3 times, they don't hear back. Well, all of a sudden that potential A account ends up down in the D category because they don't get back to you. Meanwhile, people are just busy. And what we're finding, actually, it's taking anywhere from 10 to 13 touches before we can even get somebody who's requested information to actually touch base with us and schedule an appointment. I think it's just because people are busy. So, the takeaway here is don't overlook good, solid accounts that may not be really, really ready right now.
That's right. And those leads are expensive, right?
Yes. I won't share that number, but they are expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, having a prioritization strategy helps keep your reps organized and focused on the most important activities so they can be successful. So let's explore the best way to prioritize accounts. And I think this is really why the folks are here, Lisa. They want to get into the nitty-gritty, the tactics.
Yeah. And don't get overwhelmed by this matrix, but it really the basis of this is 2 priorities. So you want to look at payoff and positioning. So using that 2 criteria, it'll allow your salespeople to identify the accounts that'll give them the highest return on their efforts.
Well, tell us a little bit about these different areas, Lisa. So I'm looking here. Let's see. You're talking about several factors: growth potential.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Profitability. Perception of your value.
Mm-hmm.
Degree of account maintenance. That's a funny one to me. And then alignment with your business offerings and philosophy. Do you have any thoughts on any of these areas? I think there are some traps that it's very easy to fall into with some of these.
Right. So growth potential, you're looking at within the accounts, opportunity for growth within the accounts, and accounts that can be leveraged to grow other accounts through referrals. So looking at that. Profitability, the actual profitability of your existing accounts or the potential profitability of your target accounts. It's easy to spend time on the squeaky wheel or the one that's reaching out to you all the time, but is there payoff there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then perception of your value. How do your accounts perceive the value you offer? The higher the perception of that value and the less price sensitive these accounts will be. So qualifying. So how qualified is the opportunity you're spending time with? Now, this is one of my favorite ones. So the degree of account maintenance. How much time you must spend with these accounts in relation to the business you're going to do with them. So we say internally here, is the juice worth the squeeze? The amount of time you spend squeezing them, are you going to get enough out of it for you to really spend time?
And in my experience, I've worked with reps over the years, maybe in the absence of having a lot of really good, strong opportunities on the go at a certain point in time.
Right.
They have a high maintenance account, maybe not a whole lot of yield there, but man, they're talking to somebody and they feel like they're servicing an account. Well, it's not a great payoff.
Yeah, they really like us.
Yeah, they really like us, and they're always willing to take my call, and they're always calling me, so I feel important.
Exactly, yeah. And this last one, alignment with your business offerings and philosophy. Are the accounts a good fit for what we offer, or what your company offers and how they do business, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of, in this context, I think about can we, should we? So just because we can provide a service or a product doesn't necessarily mean we should.
Right.
That goes back to a high maintenance account, or maybe the cultural alignment isn't there, or any number of reasons, but I think this is a valuable factor to consider.
Yeah. So your higher priority accounts will have the high growth potential, a high perception of your value, a reasonable level of account maintenance required, and a close alignment with your business purposes, right? And I would say from our standpoint, those are the accounts that we see the most growth out of.
Excellent. Okay, so let's jump over next to another grid that I feel confident you're going to explain thoroughly to us.
Right.
The positioning grid. Talk to us about this.
Right. So positioning. In addition to payoff or account attractiveness, your salespeople need to consider their positioning with these accounts. So how do your team's accounts view them? So personally, how do they view your organization, your offerings compared to the competition? A favorable rating in any of these areas pushes the account towards the high side of the spectrum versus the low. And so let's talk about positioning. I think we have a salesperson internally who has great positioning within accounts. And he can tell that, and we can tell that because they call them to consult on topics that aren't even related to what we sell, right? So, they may ask them about realignment. They may ask them about career planning for some of their people, whether a salesperson would make a good manager, those types of things. So, it's positioning really is everything in a lot of ways. And part of what we're going to do after this webinar, we'll send you a copy of the recording, but we're also going to send you a questionnaire that's kind of a diagnostic on how you're positioned, how your salespeople are positioned within their accounts. But this might be a good exercise. If you have your salespeople consider their best accounts, how do their best accounts rank them in terms of payoff? So how growth potential, profitability, how do they rank in terms of that, and the positioning? So where would they place their best accounts on this matrix? It's just a good activity. We find that the accounts with the best profitability, the best opportunities for growth, etc., will have the highest potential for your salespeople and the largest return on their investment of time, energy, and talent, right? So those accounts that would be in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, the blue quadrant and the green quadrant, those are the accounts that should take the highest priority. So does that make sense? Highest payoff, highest positioning.
Makes perfect sense. So we've talked about payoff. We've talked about positioning. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty here of actually how to prioritize the accounts.
Right. So once they've identified what quadrant their accounts fall, they can prioritize them. When the pressure is on to close deals, sales reps sometimes focus on accounts they've been working with for a long time rather than the accounts that give them the greatest return on their time investment. So it's moving out of that comfort zone, right? Having a prioritization strategy helps keep your reps organized and focused on the most important activities with the most important accounts. So your reps' approach will differ based on where each account falls on this priority scale. So for example, accounts in quadrant 3, so that black quadrant on the lower right side, would receive a maintain approach. They're accounts that bring in business, but they should not be the focus of cultivating and developing, because you can see your positioning is maybe high, but the payoff is low. Accounts in quadrant 4, the red quadrant, should receive little or no attention from your salespeople because they're low payoff, low positioning. So you're not going to do well with time spent in that area. Whereas planning efforts should really focus on the top 2 quadrants and minimize the efforts in the others. So in other words, the top 2 quadrants, in the green box, it's high payoff, low positioning. So now I'm going to work on my positioning. In the blue box, you have high strategic alignment and high positioning. So why not spend your time there when you're already down the road?
All excellent points.
Okay. So where do you start? It starts with a business plan, right? So how do you get organized in the very beginning? What we find is if you can get your salespeople to divide their accounts into these 3 categories, it starts. So there's no size-fits-all template. Your sales reps' plan should be organized on their growth strategy as well as their own individual goals. At the Brooks Group, we generally recommend categorizing them into target accounts, so accounts that have been partially qualified but haven't done any business with you. So they're accounts belonging to a competitor, for instance. The second category would then be growth accounts. So they're qualified accounts that are doing some business with you, but there's growth there. So there's potential to grow that even further. And key accounts are accounts that think of you first, right? You can't forget them because they're usually the ones that bring in the money, but spending a lot of time with them may not necessarily move the needle. So based on your unique goals, determine how much total time should be spent on each segment, and then prioritize the accounts within each segment by completing that prioritization exercise we just covered. And again, you're going to get a recording of that after this brief-and-R, and you'll be able to review it because it seems a little complex in the beginning, but once you get it, you can really coach them through how to use it.
Well, and we offer a workshop that actually helps a company to build out their plan around that. And speaking along those lines here, our sales territory planning workshops, 1.5 days in length, can be customized to your organization. And your sales reps are going to come away with detailed action plans. And I love this workshop. In fact, we're going to be doing it internally for our own sales organization. Lisa, aren't you excited?
Yes, I am.
Oh, yeah. To build out our 2018 plans. Because, if reps have a solid blueprint for meeting the number, all of a sudden it becomes far less intimidating. Every single day, every single week, they know they can take a step forward towards that number. So all of a sudden it's not this looming huge It's like how do you eat the elephant, right?
Right.
One bite at a time. So we'd love to talk to you about this more. Of course, Lisa's available to you if you'd like to discuss that. There's a URL here on this slide where you can learn more about that program.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because, as salespeople, again, certain behavioral styles, we don't want to slow down to do this. Will's teasing me a bit because I'm guilty again, but taking the time to do it, it actually, once you get into it as a salesperson, it's fun because you're talking about your own accounts. And so you get engaged because you're talking about specifically what you can do. And other people bring ideas to the table too, so it's not all on you. In some ways, it's a great way to start the year. It kind of gives you a fresh look, makes you, go to the top of the trees and look at the forest. But it also builds in accountability from a manager standpoint and from a salesperson standpoint. From a manager standpoint, there's something to coach to. So I know will always be pulling up my sales territory plan. But it also gets, from a salesperson, it keeps you honest. It keeps you really focused on high gain activities, which is where you want to be anyway.
And, you bring up a good point. The whole idea of the group dynamic and the group brainstorming. I mean, as long as the team's got a healthy dynamic, folks want to help each other. And, who knows what kind of creative ideas for prospecting and account development can come out of that. So anyway, like I said, would love to talk to you about that. Very popular program. But that being said, I think that wraps up our content today.
Giving people a little extra time back for lunch.
Exactly. Well, Lisa, I appreciate all the insight. I think there's some really good value here. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Sure. And if you'd like to reach out to me individually, my email address is lrose, like the flower, LROSE, @thebrooksgroup.com. I'd love to work with you. Take care.